and welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and video show which brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, and experience from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you won't miss a new episode. I'm your host, Frits Bussemaker, and today I'm delighted and privileged to have a conversation with Willem Buiter. Willem, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure.
Allow me to introduce you to our audience who do not know you yet. You are an American, British economist with a Dutch heritage, currently living in the US. You used to be the global chief economist of Citigroup, currently an independent economic advisor, but also have a background, an academic career with the London School of Economics, Yale, Cambridge, contributed to the Financial Times, worked as a counsel for the president of the European Bank, Bank of England, wrote a lot of scientific papers, and also notable one which you wrote on the Iceland Landsbanki with your wife, which really sticks out. Maybe we'll cover that. So again, thank you for joining The Brand Called You. When I invited you to do this podcast, I wasn't really aware what I would say how the global economy is in turmoil at the moment. So it's a little bit of serendipity, but it's very good that we're going to talk to somebody who understands economy. Maybe to begin with, could you explain for the people what an economist actually does?
Well, an economist can do many different things. He or she can be engaged in academic type research. He can or she can work for the government, be an advisor to private financial corporations, to large private non-financial corporations, which have vast balance sheets, often spanning the globe. So, so now you can just lean backward and think about the economic problems, extreme at the moment, that are being generated as we watch, and write about them, try and make a difference to people's perception of what's going on, in the hope that they may be able to avoid a disaster.
Okay, so the role of an economist is that avoiding disasters? I mean, I'm pretty.
No, I think that is my personal perception of it. I really think that economists can, if they can persuade their counterparties, prevent really bad events from happening, like the madness of the Trump tariff policies, on, off, more or less, even more. And it's just an invitation to economic pain and widespread misallocation, unemployment, and all that.
It seems chaotic, but I'm also picking up feedback when I follow the news that it might be chaotic, but it is something we needed to do because it's shaking up the world. It's rearranging relationships.
Undoubtedly, some changes in trade and financial relationships are necessary. National security considerations make it essential for large countries like the US or large bundles of countries like the European Union to produce domestically key inputs, products that are essential to the functioning and to the military capacity of these countries. That capacity has been eroded in the US and also in Europe over the last 30, 40 years, and it's time to regain it. But they should do this through well-designed industrial policies. It may involve some tariffs, it may involve some export controls, the kind of stuff that China is imposing with rare earths on the US at the moment. But it should use taxes, subsidies, regulation, legislation, non-tariff barriers to trade in a selective and systematic way, not coming up with the 145% tariffs across the board and then moving some of them off because it may adversely affect consumers in the US. So yes, we need to restructure the international economic system, but we should continue to have the benefits of global trade, global capital mobility, global migration
Yeah.
In an orderly and a transparent way.
Fascinating topic. Before we dive into the global economy, I want to take one step back, if I may. And that is basically, how did you become an economist? Was that a conscious choice when you started your education, or was it a bit more by chance?
Through my family background, my father was an international trade union official before he became mayor of Groningen. And so I was always interested in economics and politics. As a student, my first year, the only year I spent in the Netherlands since I was 6 years old, I studied political science for a year. This was the year 67, 68, that most of what was done around universities was occupying the classrooms. And so I left, moved to Cambridge, and switched to economics there. And I got really fascinated by it because I had great, magical, legendary teachers, Joan Robinson, Nicholas Caldor, James Mead. I even got some lectures from Robert Kahn, who was the protege of Keynes.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary. And I've been, a captive of economics and related subjects, other social sciences, ever since.
And the way you describe it, e economy, and we see that on a daily basis, it's not an isolated topic. Which other main topics or academic arenas are most associated with economy?
Well, there's the technical underpinnings, which involve a lot of often quite complicated math and statistics. But the sort of the horizontal interactions and benefits come from familiarity with the insights of social psychology, political science, sociology. Those would be the areas that international relations, the areas that I make use of most egregiously, yes.
Thank you for that. Now, you initially had a career in the academic arena, as mentioned, London School of Economics, Yale, Cambridge. At a certain point, you moved to the private sector, chief economist, Citigroup. What triggered that move?
Actually, I flipped out of academia and back into academia
Yeah,
many
I saw that.
times,
Yeah.
right? So I worked as member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of England for 3 years. For 5 years, I worked as chief economist at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, looking at the former Soviet Empire, its evolution, fascinating stuff. But then I went back to academia. And it was only in 2010 that I moved for the first time into the private sector properly. I had some experience with the private sector because in my last academic job at the London School of Economics, where had three appointments actually over my lifetime. But in my last appointment there, I had a part-time advisory job at Goldman Sachs. This was during the great financial crisis. And it was completely fascinating to watch this financial crisis unfold on my TV screen and in the documents that were circulated around Goldman Sachs. Citi, of course, was very much impacted by the global financial crisis. And when, much to my surprise, they offered me this job of chief economist, I was really ready to make use of the insight I'd gained as an advisor during the worst financial crisis since the 1930s. So that was easy. It didn't hurt that it paid rather better in academia as well.
Yeah.
Right? So it was intrinsically fascinating, but it was also pretty lucrative.
You've used the word fascinating quite a lot in this discussion we've had so far. Is that for you a requirement to spend time on something, that you need to be motivated, that it inspires you, that it interests you? Or can you work on something which you consider boring?
Occasionally, and as part of, as a precondition for some more intrinsically interesting activity. Yes, I could handle short periods of boring work, but I really need to be intellectually engaged, uh, fascinated,
Yeah.
challenged
Yeah.
by um, by issues, by problems, by paradoxes. Yeah.
Now, I would assume that almost by definition, when you have an academic career, you coach, you teach the next generation.
Hmm.
Did you also have that opportunity when you worked in the private sector, that you took younger people along? So that this is what's happening.
Clearly, yes. I was fortunate when I joined Citi in 2010 that I could bring in a number of new recruits. And I um, found some outstanding young people that I've been close to ever since. They've become friends after being colleagues as well. Yes, it's very fortunate to have this continuing relationship with the younger generations.
Good. Now, what would you advise a younger generation, the next generation of economists? Um, uh, are, lead by examples. No, I'm not going to fill this in. What is your advice to the younger generation if they want to fulfill their career?
Well, um, make sure that if you can, that what you're going to be devoting your time and a large chunk of your life with really interests you. That it has um, uh, properties um, that yield you insights that you know you could never have gained anywhere else. So um, view it not just instrumentally, that is important, it should uh, pay properly and allow you to live where you want to live, but also be intrinsically motivating and captivating.
So, if you
So,
have a choice, intrinsically motivated to work or a high salary, if you had to make that choice.
no, I don't think you should have to make the choice. Certainly, you can do different things at different stages of your life. It's often the case that you have to do your investment in reputation as a scholar, as an advisor, as a public speaker, whatever, before you can start reaping the the monetary fruits
Yeah.
from those investments. But they shouldn't just be seen as investments. They should have intrinsic value to you. They should bring you joy.
Well, okay, that's good advice, which I've heard a lot of people mention, which I meet on this program called the brand called you.
Mhm.
I want to come back to, you could say, current economy. Um, are you concerned?
Very, yes. Um, we have the immediate problem of dealing with the massive uncertainty that is created by Trump's international trade and other policies. But there also are other serious concerns. We haven't had a war when it's clear in Europe until um, Ukraine got invaded by Russia. And this is still going on, and nobody knows how and when it's going to end. We may well see, especially with the US detaching itself to a certain degree from the international role it had assumed since World War II, you may see the takeover of Taiwan by China, which would be a big economic shock, but could, of course, also have other security consequences. So I think we're living in a more perilous international theme politically um, and security-wise than I can recall well, really since the Cuban crisis in the 60s when the Russians tried to install nuclear missiles in Cuba. So yes, this is very scary. Um, but even if you don't get the security disasters, the economic consequences of the chaotic nationalism, protectionism, isolationism, um, rejection of um, global responsibilities when you have global power of, of the current American administration. I have never seen up close anything so confused and confusing, so bewildering.
Is your assessment, is this deliberate, a deliberate action to cause chaos, to confuse people, and then in the meantime um, execute a strategy? Or is it just something where you feel, oh, everybody's confused?
But you know, I know some people make the argument that the chaotic behavior of Trump and his administration is a well thought out strategy um, for gaining the upper hand somehow. I don't think so. Um, um, the flip-flops that we've seen in trade, the um, contradictory statement made about Ukraine,
Yeah.
right? The total lack of clarity about the American um, commitment to stand behind Taiwan, the risk of a large-scale attack, possibly with Israel, by the US on Iran and its incipient nuclear capacity. All these things are deeply bewildering. I don't think there is a well thought out strategy. This is
So
not rational behavior.
if okay, then the follow-on question on that is can you advise on action, on a proactive approach, and then by whom? Or is it better to hold still and see what happens until we understand what is happening?
You certainly have to plan for massive and continuing uncertainty, right? There should, and the adverse effect that this uncertainty will have on investment and even on household behavior. So you should prepare for that. You should try and get closer to countries that share your your values and objectives. I mean, the EU and the UK, right, should get closer, preferably by the UK joining the single market, but you can't win them all. And there are countries in Asia, especially, including India, where the more internationally oriented nations who see the benefits of openness while recognizing the risks and the security problems they can cause. So yes, get together, find out who your friends are, and when you find out, plan possible joint responses to some of the likely future disruptive policies that the Trump administration may inflict on us.
Okay. Now, traditionally, we align with companies close to us, close within the region. So we consider to be okay, let's one Europe. But we also live in an age which the World Economic Forum calls the fourth industrial age era, where we are all connected through the internet on a global level.
Yeah.
Could you anticipate, and I'm just having this thought at the moment, that rather than connecting yourself to, let's say, like-minded um, countries, which are in the neighborhood, you can do that, but because of the internet, all of a sudden, Australia, Korea, Canada, and Europe, countries in Europe could align and come together. And I'm just,
No, absolutely. When I mentioned India as an example, that was just, that's not around the corner
yeah,
exactly. But yes, I mean, Australia, New Zealand,
yeah,
Canada, Mexico, even though it has deep development problems. But yes, there are many countries with whom a closer involvement would have economic benefits and carry no or negligible security risks. China, of course, is a country with whom we can also pursue um, further interdependence, but their security issues may limit the extent to which supply chains become unique and significantly involving China. We need, I think, work on a portfolio of supply chain for any strategic commodity. One maybe with China, but another one could be through India, and the third one through Canada. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay, interesting idea, food for thought. Okay, I'm moving on to something which fascinated me. As introduction, I mentioned you wrote a paper with your wife
Mhm.
on Iceland Landbanski um, crisis. Um, how often do you discuss work and write papers with your wife?
Oh, I've written a fair number of papers with my wife, including one quite recently. Most of them have been quite theoretical papers for lots of math and equations. The Iceland one was sometimes an exception because we just um, saw this disaster developing, and then we got invited to write a paper on the issue, a non-technical paper aimed at an audience of policymakers, bankers, rather than just academics. And I must say, for once we got it right. We predicted that a country like Iceland, which had bank balance sheets of 1,000% of GDP, there's much of it, most of the liabilities denominated not in Icelandic krona, but in foreign currency, which the central bank there could not print. In other words, there was no lender of last resort for the Icelandic banks. It was simply a question of when a
Yeah.
run would bring them down. And that happened a few months after we had the meeting presenting that paper. Yeah. But we still discuss economics regularly, and we write economic op-ed pieces together. Yeah.
But does that dominate the dinner table? Does it dominate the Sunday morning breakfast?
Actually, uh, when we lived in London, we had two youngish kids, I think in their early teens. And we were wondering why they never asked their friends over for dinner. And they told us, well, Mommy and Daddy, your conversation is so boring. Yeah. So, yes, we had a lot of conversations about economics,
Yeah.
and we still talk about it and about politics. And we are social scientists. Uh, my wife also became quite interested in social psychology and the aspects of behavioral economics, trying to explain how small groups make decisions and all that. So, yes, no, this is definitely still something that we can bore people with to any degree wanted. Yes.
Okay, but assuming the kids are now older, do they appreciate that they've been exposed to that discussion, or are they still bored?
Oh, I think they got over it. Yes, I don't. And we certainly, when we are with them, have political and economic discussions. You can't avoid that if you do as much as turn on the radio, watch television, or look at your smartphone, right? The news just jumps out at you, and you have to try and make sense of it if you're going to order your life
Yeah.
in a viable
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. And is this also a case that if you understand it better, you can better handle the situation?
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that uh, we have been helped by our economics background and studying um, and watching a financial crisis unfolding in the allocation of our own retirement portfolios. Yes.
Now, you just mentioned that when you wrote the paper on the Icelandic bank, you
Hmm.
predicted it correctly.
Yes.
Is that something you are proud of, that you've made that right prediction?
Well, in a way, yes. You, it's hard often to predict
Yeah.
prices, and we got not just um, the banks afflicted right, we got the timing more or less right, uh, but we got the cause of the crisis right. So it
And,
was
yeah.
really a lesson in useful economics. Yeah.
And is that a typical scenario where an economist can be proud of, or and maybe also to rephrase this question to you, what are you most proud of as an economist?
Mm, I, I suppose that I'm most proud of having had the pleasure and the privilege of supervising a fair number of excellent economic dissertations and having contributed to the formation uh, of the next generation of economic analysts, economic academics, and applied economists. So I think my teaching role is probably what I um, am most proud of. I mean, certain papers that I've written, no, I've written too many, but they're fun, and quite a few of them are even right. So, and I still write and try to publish stuff, but um, the there, yeah, uh,
No,
I'm grateful that I could do that, but
uh,
I'm proud of my role as as a teacher and a facilitator of academic research by the next generations.
related question, what does success mean for you?
Success. Well, it means A, still at the advanced age of 75, very much enjoying the work I continue to do,
Mhm.
research, advice, and all that, and um, being able to look back at a now 50 plus year career um, and feel that I didn't make too many wrong choices. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, final question, Willem. Unfortunately, time is moving so fast, but
Mhm.
after those 50 years, how do you want people to remember you? And actually, do you think how do you want people to remember you? Has that question changed? Has the answer changed over time?
Well, I really didn't ask myself that question when I was in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? I want people to remember me from a professional point of view as somebody who addressed economic problems that were both potentially um, practically important and um, academically um, exciting. That I focused, I tried to get results on um, on the right topics using appropriate methodologies. That's that's I think all I can hope for.
Yeah. One final question. What's your prediction for the near future?
Well, we are likely to have a global slowdown, global recession, as the trade conflict between the US and the rest of the world continues to develop and won't go away. I mean, China is not going to give in to, and so yes, most regions in the world will see a material cyclical downturn and a temporary uptick in inflation because of higher tariffs and other barriers to trade. But in the longer run, I do hope that 4 years from now, we will have a president here who will rethink the course the country has taken under Trump, and that we will move towards a less damaging configuration, not the kind of globalization that we had pre 2018 or certainly pre 2024, but something better than the mess and the chaos that we are likely to see for the next 3.5 years.
Okay, so turbulent times ahead, but
Yes,
on the long run, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
yes. And AI will be there to to help us all. Yeah.
Okay, that is a podcast completely on its own. So maybe we'll do a second one discussing the impact of technology on economy. But for now, Willem, I want to thank you so much for your time, sharing your time, your insights with the brand called You. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.